Sukhamadhyapayamasa Nivritiniratamuni Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmaja Payamasa Nivritiniratam Munihi Sasamhitam Bhagavatim Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Sukhamadhyapayamasa Nivritiniratam Munihi Sasamhitam Bhagavatim
Kritvanukramya Chatmajam Sukham Adhyapayamasa Nivritim Niratam Munihi. Online? Synonym Saha, that. Samhitam, Vedic literature. Bhagavatim, in relation with the personality of Godhead. Kritva, having done. Anukramya, by correction and repetition. Cha, and. Atmajam, his own son. Sukham, Sukadev Goswami. Adhyapayamasa, taught. Nivritti, path of self-realization. Niratam, engaged. Munihi, the sage. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son Sri Sukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Translation with repetition. The great sage Vyasadeva, after compiling the Srimad Bhagavatam and revising it, taught it to his own son, Sri Sukadev Goswami, who was already engaged in self-realization. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the natural commentation on the Brahma Sutras compiled by the same author. This Brahma Sutra or Vedanta Sutra is meant for those who are already engaged in self-realization. Srimad Bhagavatam is so made that one becomes at once engaged in the path of self-realization simply by hearing the topics. Although it is especially meant for the Paramahamsas or those who are totally engaged in self-realization, it works into the depths of the hearts of those who may be worldly men. Worldly men are all engaged in sense gratification. But even such men will find in this Vedic literature a remedial measure for their material diseases. Sukadev Goswami was a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth, and his father taught him Srimad Bhagavatam. Amongst mundane scholars, there is some diversity of opinion as to the date of compilation of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is, however, certain from the text of the Bhagavatam that it was compiled before the disappearance of King Parikshit and after the departure of Lord Krishna. When Maharaj Parikshit was ruling the world as the king of Bharatavarsha, he chastised the personality of Kali. According to the revealed scriptures and astrological calculation, the age of Kali is in its 5000th year. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled not less than 5000 years ago. Mahabharata was compiled before Srimad Bhagavatam, and the Puranas were compiled before Mahabharata. That is an estimation of the date of compilation of the different Vedic literatures. The synopsis of Srimad Bhagavatam was given before the detailed description under instruction of Narada. Srimad Bhagavatam is the science for following the path of Nivritti Marga. The path of Prabhritti Marga was condemned by Narada. The path is the natural inclination for all conditioned souls. The theme of Srimad Bhagavatam is the cure of the materialistic disease of the human being, or stopping completely the pangs of material existence. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. This battery is wrong. Hare Krishna. The title for this verse can be very aptly put as the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we've been seeing in the past few verses how Vedavyas sat on meditation after hearing the instruction of Narada Muni, and such wonderful realizations that he had. And then this is an apt conclusion of his view that he had in the form of what he wrote, which we saw in the few verses earlier. Anartha upasamam sakshat bhakti yogam prayojitah lokasya jananto vidvams chakre satvata samhita. Why did Bhagavatam, how did Bhagavatam come into existence? Why Vyasadev wrote Srimad Bhagavatam? And he himself clarifies, Anartha upasamam sakshat bhakti yogam prayojita. Actually, the anarthas, the unwanted, the superfluous things in our life, those miseries that we undergo, we don't deserve that. Anartha upasamam, and that can be mitigated by engaging in bhakti, in the process of devotion to the Supreme Lord. But lokasya ajananto vidvams, since people are not aware of it, vidvams, Vedavyas compiled Chakre Satvata Samhita. He compiled this Samhita called Paramahamsa Samhita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And we saw in the last verse, there may be some people who do not even know Sanskrit, who are not aware, who are illiterate, can't even read. Doesn't matter, even if you are not able to read. Yashyam Vaishruyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsa Soka Moha Bhayapaha. The power of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Just by paying oral reception. Yashyam Vaishruyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe. About the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If we just pay if we give oral reception, then what happens? Bhaktir utpadyate pumsa, the bhakti, the seed of devotion gets sprouted in our heart. What happens if the seed of bhakti is sprouted in our heart? Soka moha bhaya apaha. Soka, lamentation, bhaya, fear, and moha, illusion. Everybody in this material world is struggling with these three things. Lamenting for things that they could not do in life, could not achieve, lost opportunities, fear of the future, what will happen to me if something is gone or stolen or lost, and illusion about the present, what is the right thing to do. So, moha bhaya paha, that will be completely eradicated from the heart. Since I mentioned this verse can be aptly summarized as the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we have limited time to glorify an unlimited glorious scripture called Srimad Bhagavatam, I have chosen a few just to give you a glimpse of what this Bhagavatam is and how serious we should be about reading this Bhagavatam and why this is so glorified. Anything that is glorious or anything that is glorified, it has to be practical in our life. It should be something that I can apply in my life. I can see some tangible change. Let's see why Bhagavatam is so glorious. One of the verses in the Bhagavatam which comes in the 12th canto, beautiful verse which says, what is the effect of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam? Sankirtyamano Bhagavan Anantaha Shrutanubhavo Vyasanam Hipumsam Praveshya Chittam Vidhunoti Asesham Yatha Tamo Arko Bharam Vibhati Bhataha. It's a beautiful verse. It comes in the 12th canto. It says why Srimad Bhagavatam is so special and so glorious. The first reason why it is so special or glorious is it talks about the glories of the Supreme Lord. Bhagavatam's pages or the slokas or the entire Bhagavatam is just filled with glorification of Krishna. So what happens if it is glorification of Krishna? What is the effect of knowing that? This verse, this translation of this verse says, when people properly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sankirtyamano, when people properly glorify or simply hear, two things. One has to properly glorify. Properly glorification means one has to glorify in the parampara, as one has heard from his spiritual master, without any addition, multiplication, subtraction, division, as it is. As Prabhupada has said, who's coming in the parampara, repeating that, not adding our own mental concoction. When people properly glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead or simply hear about His power, in simple mind, when we hear about the power of the Supreme Lord, all potent, the power, the Lord's power it's unparalleled. When we hear that simply, then what happens? The Lord personally enters their hearts and cleanses away every trace of misfortune. Praveshya chittam vidhunoti asesham. And what is the example? There are two analogies, two examples which Bhagavatam gives. Just as the sun removes the darkness, or as a powerful wind drives away the clouds. This is the effect of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, which is filled with glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now the question comes is, we are also hearing Bhagavatam, we are also reading Bhagavatam. Why is it that the Bhagavatam is not working the way it is supposed to? Or what is the problem? What are the loopholes, or how we should learn, how we should understand this Bhagavatam, how it can be revealed? That's what we will try to cover. The first thing that we should remember is, unlike other Puranas, Bhagavatam is considered to be the spotless Purana, the Mahapurana, where it has got 12 cantos, and the first 9 cantos build us. It prepares our consciousness to come to the 10th canto, which is actually the glorification of Supreme Personality of Godhead and all His pastimes and activities. Unlike other Puranas where each of the chapters are standalone, this is a preparation of consciousness, knowing the signs of God. Before we understand who the God is, what are His activities, what are His fame, what are His glories, first we need to know the signs of God. And the first 9 chapters, first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam prepare us to know who the Supreme Lord is, so that we can understand His activities and the pastimes. And wonderful description of the activities and the pastimes of the Lord given in the 10th canto, which is accessible to us, but we need to prepare ourselves for that. First thing people think is that sometimes Srimad Bhagavatam is like a mythology. These are all, this probably never happened, or these are all, I don't know whether these are really true or not. Now, to remove those kind of doubts, we have to see what Prabhupada says. And in the purport of first canto, 6th chapter, 11th verse, Prabhupada says Srimad Bhagavatam is the repetition of history, which happened some hundreds of millions of years ago. As it was said herein before, only the most important factors of history are picked up to be recorded in this transcendental literature. These are all historical facts. These are not some mythology. These are not some fictitious thing. These are repetition of history which happened some hundreds of millions of years ago. And the important ones are picked up here and recorded in this transcendental literature. Next, moving on, there is a verse which comes in the Bhagavatam itself, which talks about the glory of Srimad Bhagavatam. Very interesting verse. It says, "Sarva Vedanta Saram hi Sri Bhagavatam ishyate tad rasamrita triptasya nanyatra syadrati kvachit." Sarva Vedanta Saram hi. Actually, Bhagavatam is declared to be the essence of all Vedanta philosophy. This is Saram. This is the essence. Sarva Vedanta Saram hi Sri Bhagavatam ishyate. And this is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy. And there is no need, nanyatra syadrati kvachit. There is no other need to go to any other literature. Actually, this is a point which we should remember, because Bhagavatam has got everything. If Bhagavatam has got everything, what is the need to go to other literature? Somebody say that, no, but I am still attracted. That means I have not understood completely Bhagavatam. Why? Because it is mentioned in Bhagavatam itself. You don't need anything else. And I will tell you some very interesting facts that will collaborate, or that will corroborate this statement which Bhagavatam is making. But even before we go there, there is one thing which also is mentioned in this, tad rasamrita triptasya. It will actually satisfy everyone. One who has felt satisfaction from its nectarian mellow will never be attracted to any other literature. Sarva Vedanta Saram hi Sri Bhagavatam ishyate. What is it that people in this world are looking for? They are all looking to become happy. They are all looking to become satisfied. They are all looking how their life can be blissful. When they'll have no hankerings, there is no miseries, there is a cessation of misery. They are all looking. Only two kinds of people Bhagavatam mentions are not looking for that. One who is a madman and one who is a dead man. But rest all are looking for this. And Bhagavatam is the solution. Bhagavatam is declared to be the essence of all Vedanta philosophy. And one who has felt satisfaction from its nectarian mellow will never be attracted to any other literature. Now, when I say that, one should not be attracted to any other literature, I want to give you just one example which you can meditate in your own life. Imagine if you have to go on a very big, very important mission, and this mission you have no idea where you are going to go. This is a very complicated mission, unknown country, unknown territory, and you have to go for an unknown period of time. What will you do? You will pick up the most important things. You will not carry some unwanted, unnecessary things with you. Srila Prabhupada, when he was asked by his guru to preach this message in the Western country, he was carrying a very few important selected things. Maybe his umbrella, a trunk with some clothes, but also he was carrying 2 trunks of volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam that he had translated. He said that I became a carrier of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why this Srimad Bhagavatam is so important, and why our Vaishnavas, pay so much of importance to this? We know from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, where he says, Ramya Kachit, no, what is that? What is the first line of that? Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya. Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya. The most worshipable form of the Lord is Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Brajesha Tanaya, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya Tadham Vrindavanam. And his abode is also equally worshipable as the Supreme Lord. So second, Aradhyo Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya Tadhama Vrindavanam. Third thing that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Ramya Kachid Upasana Brajabadhu Bargena Ya Kalpita. Ramya Kachid Upasana, the most beautiful form of worship, is the worship of the gopis. Ramya Kachid Upasana Brajabadhu Bargena Ya Kalpita. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Premo Prumarthom Mahan. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. This Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. This is the fourth thing. There are 5 things which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. And Prema Pumartha Mahan, the love of Godhead, the 5th Purushartha. He's talking about 5 important things in that Bhagavatam is mentioned. Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam. This is a spotless Purana. This can eradicate. This is free from all the tinges of material contamination. What are the material contamination? The I-ness and my-ness. Where is it mentioned? In rest of the Vedic literatures which are talking about the Pravritti Marga, how you can gratify your senses, how you can go for the sense gratification business without getting implicated. This way you do some sacrifice, this way you perform this worship, you worship this demigod, you worship this thing, your desires will get satisfied. With a goal that ultimately one day you will come to the stage where you want to get rid of all these things and worship the Supreme Lord. Dharma, Artha, Kama, and then Moksha. But Srimad Bhagavatam is called Puranam Amalam. Where else it is mentioned? In the beginning of Bhagavatam itself, where the Bhagavatam first canto, first chapter, second verse, it is mentioned Dharma projita kaitavo atro paramo nirmat saranam satam. Dharma projita. All these kinds of cheating religion, Bhagavatam is kicking them out. Dharma projita kaitavo atro paramo nirmat saranam satam. This is meant for people who are 100% pure in their heart, who are free from envy. It will work. It works. If you are looking for cheating things, where you want to get cheated by some petty gain, by some small gain, there are other Vedic literatures. But if you are 100% pure in heart, you are looking for the supreme absolute truth, you are genuinely, seriously sincere in your heart, Srimad Bhagavatam is the book. Now, how to get guided by Srimad Bhagavatam? I wanted to tell you why this Bhagavatam is so glorious and why the glorification of Krishna is so important in our life. In Bhagavatam, when there is this Chaturshloki, where in these 4 nutshell verses, Krishna is explaining the whole complication, supreme absolute truth to Brahma, in the second verse of that Chaturshloki, he says something very interesting. Rite artham yat pratiyeta na pratiyeta chatmani tad vidyad atmano mayam yatha bhaso yatha tamaha. The translation is very nice. Krishna says, O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. In our life, we value so many things. But what Krishna is telling here, if it is not connected to me, then consider it to be no reality. This is the most, I would say, the fundamental glory of Srimad Bhagavatam, where it brings in our center of activities Krishna. If anything is of value to me in my life, it must be connected to Krishna. If it is not, then it is all Maya. It is, O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy. Because what we don't understand, the truth which remains unknown to us, is that behind this entire creation, there is Supreme Lord. Behind every single manifestation, where it is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Krishna says, Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. I am the source of all material and spiritual manifestation. But like the thread, invisible thread, which is holding these pearls, we are not able to see the hands of the Lord. Bhagavatam is filled with wonderful descriptions of devotees' life who were seeing Krishna in every step of their life. What it urges us is to come to that stage where we can see hands of Lord in every situation of our life. Everything that we consider to be valuable in our life should be connected to Krishna. As I said, Bhagavatam is filled with wonderful description of different pastimes of the Lord. There are heroic activities of the Lord which are described. There are also many villains which are there. And they all talk about something that we should not have in our life. How we should get rid of so many things which are there, which are unwanted, which are like the anarthas in our life. So, but when we are talking about this, the second glory that we should remember is that Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be understood by our dull material intelligence, by our brain. It has to be revealed, and this is a very significant point that one has to remember. As I said, why people are looking for other literature? Because they have not understood Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam has not been revealed properly. No, what do you mean by not revealed properly? This has to be paid attention. It is mentioned in Bhagavatam when Brahma, created the secondary creation. Before he did that, he was born from the navel of Vishnu in that lotus. And when he was born, he was not knowing what to do. He was completely clueless as to how to do this creation. So what he did was he went in the stem of the lotus, went to the navel of Vishnu to see if there is something that he can figure out. What is this? And he saw that it is all darkness. There is nothing there. And he was completely bewildered. In that state of bewilderment, he heard these two transcendental syllables called ta and pa, tapa. And tapa means austerity. Just sneeze, that's the truth. So he heard this tapa and he sat for austerity for a very long time. And after he sat for austerity for a very long time, he offers wonderful prayers for creative energy. That's there in Bhagavatam. So he did this austerity. He heard this first he heard this instruction and he thought, this is revealed by the Lord, let me do this austerity. He did this austerity, he offered these prayers, and the Lord appears in front of him. And then he says this, one of these prayers that Brahma offers has a clue as how Srimad Bhagavatam is revealed. Why everybody can't get it? Why it appears like a boring text for many who don't even find interest to read this? Because they don't know the secret of how to read Bhagavatam, how it has to be revealed. Let's pay attention to this. This is a verse which comes in the 3rd canto. It says, O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activity. So this is in response to Brahma's prayers by the Lord Vishnu who appeared in front of him. He's telling, O Brahma, the prayers that you have chanted praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, all these are to be considered my causeless mercy. It's a very powerful thing. The 3 things that he is telling here is that the prayers that you have chanted, praising the glories of my transcendental activities, the penances you have undertaken to understand me, and your firm faith in me, these 3 things, consider this to be my causeless mercy. If we take pride on something that I have read, I have to read this Bhagavatam, or I am an initiated disciple now, and I have to finish this as a duty, as a ritual I have to read, I will never be able to understand. It has to be revealed. Consider this to be my causeless mercy. Now, why this is important? Sometimes, when we get up for our Mangalarti, we think that we have done it by our own efforts. I have gotten up for Mangalarti, and now I am coming and waking up the Supreme Lord, right? Actually, our devotees, they say, no, this is not the right paradigm. The right paradigm is, because of the causeless mercy of the Lord, because of the presence of the super soul, I got up in the morning. Otherwise, the state of sleep, or the state of sleep is a forgetfulness. You have no idea. You're completely lost. Again, the super soul somehow gives that inspiration and we wake up. By his mercy, we wake up and then we come. Not that, we wake up and then come and we wake up the Lord. That doesn't happen. It is always by the mercy. This important thing has to be very significantly internalized. People don't understand this. So if everything has to be revealed by the Lord, if everything is causeless mercy of the Lord, then what is the point? I'm not supposed to do anything. Because anyway, when the Lord thinks that, he will reveal, he'll reveal. I'll just live my life. Prabhupada clarifies that in this purport of this wonderful verse. He says that voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. Material acquisitions of wealth or education are not considered. Voluntary endeavor. First word is voluntary. Voluntary means it has to come from the heart. It is not from liver or from any other belly, stomach, no, from the heart. I should eagerly want to know this. Voluntarily and endeavor. There should be a sincere effort. That is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. If I want this Bhagavatam to be revealed to me, if I have a desire that I want to understand this, voluntary endeavor. No endeavor. Actually, we don't, our situation is so unfortunate. We think it's just another text. Or somehow we don't get the importance. Why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying so much important about this Bhagavatam? Why Bhagavatam itself is talking about the glories of Bhagavatam? Why Vedavyas compiled Bhagavatam at the maturity after having compiled so much? It is something which is non-different from the Lord, and we can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the pages of Bhagavatam. But what is required is voluntary endeavor. I have seriously have to put some efforts to know this. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification for spiritual perfection. No other consideration, no material acquisition, no education, nothing is required. So this is the second glory. First glory is that Bhagavatam prepares our life or brings us to this conclusion where it puts Krishna in the center of all our activities, or it gives us a different priority or paradigm in our life where we think whatever is valuable to us, it should be connected with Krishna. And the second thing is Bhagavatam is revealed. You can't just get it like this. Okay, now if I have Bhagavatam in my life, what happens? This is a very interesting verse, very, very powerful. If you associate with Bhagavatam every single day, like we do, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, we don't, some of you may be doing, may not be doing, but if we do it regularly in our life, we come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam every single day. What happens? It is mentioned. Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Jnanam yad aprati nivritta gunormi chakram. Actually, this is a complicated whirlpool of different modes of material nature. And we are all stuck in this, the waves and whirlpools of this material modes. It's like a machine which is rotating, and in that rotating machine, in some blade or something, we are stuck, and we are subjected to this miseries from lifetime after lifetime. But this transcendental knowledge revealed in Bhagavatam will bring a suspension. That wheel which is rotating, it will come to a stop, a halt. Transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment, and being transcendental, it is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? This is a rhetoric question. Who could fail to be attracted? But all of us are in that category, failing to get attracted. So, interesting to know the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. How did Bhagavatam come about? Which we have seen in the pages of Bhagavatam before. But still it is good to remind us, how did this Bhagavatam come about? And we know that when the sages, they were seated in Naimisharanya, and they were asking one question after another, one of the concerns that they had was, now Krishna has gone. Krishna has left this world. And along with Krishna, all the dharma, the principles of religion and knowledge also has gone. What should people do in life? What is the solution for them? What is the respite? And Bhagavatam gives this solution, as Sutta Goswami answers. Krishne swadhama upagate dharma jnanadhivisaha kalo nashta drishamesa puranarko adhunoditaha. Krishne swadhama upagate. Krishna has gone back. Don't worry. Dharma jnanadhivisaha. But kalo nashta drishamesa puranarko adhunodita. Very beautiful verse. This Bhagavatam Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision, that's all of us, due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali, shall get light from this Purana. Actually, we are lost. Imagine if you are blindfolded, put in a place which is completely dark, like a tunnel, which you can't see, you can't figure out where is the beginning and an end. What do you do? That is why it is so fearful, this existence is. We are so scared of what will happen to us. If somebody comes and harms me, what will I do? How do I come out of it? Where do I get the light? Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. There are few important things which Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Very, very important things, if you pay attention. Both the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like torch bearers for the blind people of this age. So Prabhupada is mentioning about two books. Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam are like the torch bearers for the blind people of this age. And then he goes on to say, in other words, if men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only. Pay attention to the word only. They must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. It's very clear. We don't have to really worry about this, that, what he's saying, what others are saying. No, not required. If men in this age of Kali want to see the real light of life, they must take to these two books only, and their aim of life will be fulfilled. And then Prabhupada goes on and says, and Srimad Bhagavatam is the summum bonum of life, Lord Krishna personified. This is Lord Sri Krishna personified. I mean, what else we need in life? This is available to us. But yet we don't know how to get this. What happens is, when Bhagavatam study becomes a ritual, when it is done just as a formality, we don't see the real Krishna who is available in the pages of Bhagavatam. We miss out on the ecstasy of Srila Prabhupada, which is given in the form of his purport. That is why, if you pay attention, one of the things which we can see, this word which is used here called Kritvanu-kramya. Kritvanu-kramya means he revised and edited. The translation, word to word translation of that is correction and repetition. Sukadeva Goswami very carefully corrected and edited, and he has written this. And that is one of the reasons why there are so many commentaries of Bhagavad Gita by Mayavadis and other schools of people, other schools of thought, but they don't have any commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. They can't dare touch to this, because it is direct glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his full glories. The previous verse we had, Yashyam Vaishruya Manayam Krishne Parama Purushe. So whose glories it is? Krishna. Who's Krishna? Parama Purusha. Is there a name? Yes, he's Krishna. You can't say it in any way that it is some impersonal Brahman. Yashyam Vaishruya Manayam Krishne Parama Purushe Bhaktirutpadyate Pumsa Soka Moha Bhayapaha. This is the beauty of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Krishna personified. That is why there is no commentary on Bhagavatam by Mayavadi school of thought. They can't interpret it in different ways. It's very, very direct. As I said, there are many glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm just picking a few handful. My important slide, where is it? Okay, I have missed one slide. That is the most important verse. I'll just project it here. How do we read Srimad Bhagavatam? So this is given in this verse, very important verse, 12, 13, 18. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naiskarmyam Aviskritam Tat Shunvan Supathan Vicharan Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyen Naraha. This is wonderful verse actually. This verse is the summary of how we should read or apply Bhagavatam in our life. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. This Bhagavatam is considered to be Paramahamsa Samhita. What does it mean, Paramahamsa Samhita? Paramahamsa Samhita means it is got the description of Paramahamsas. The pages of Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with description of devotees who are Paramahamsa. What are the qualification of Paramahamsa? Very wonderfully Bhagavatam describes. Paramahamsas are the ones who are never envious of others, who are never puffed up in their life, who are not the ones who think that I don't need to know this. I have learned everything. What are the examples? Where are the examples? Take the example of Parikshit Maharaj, a pure devotee himself, who was protected by the Lord from his birth in the womb of his mother. By the Lord personally, by himself, the Lord protected Parikshit. Yet when it comes to receiving the transcendental knowledge, he surrenders to Sukadeva Goswami. He voluntarily surrenders. Take the example of Vidura. Vidura is Yamaraj himself, is Dharmaraj. He was insulted by Duryodhan. He was giving all the right moral spiritual instruction to Dhritarashtra. But when it comes to hearing, he also surrenders to Maitreya Rishi. Take the example of gopis. When the gopis are considered, like we just heard, Aradhya Bhagavan Brajesha Tanaya Tadhama Brindavanam Ramya Kachid Upasana Brajabadhu Vargena Ya Kalpita. The worship that the gopis used to have, that is the highest form of worship. But yet when it comes to receiving the knowledge, when Uddhav came, they didn't say that, we know everything about Krishna, why have you come here? We don't need to learn from you. They also voluntarily surrendered. That is why the beauty of Bhagavatam is when we come with that humility, when we come with that mood of learning this, surrendering our ego, Bhagavatam gets revealed. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. This is the most dear to the Vaishnavas. Yasmin Paramahamsyam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate. Then, so if you take to this Bhagavatam, what happens? Tatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naiskarmyam Aviskritam. One will get transcendental knowledge, detachment from this material world, bhakti, devotion, naiskarmyam aviskritam. And how should you do this? How should you read this? What is the technique or what is the solution? Tat shunvan supathan. If you pay attention to the word, one word, just a qualifier or an adjective called supathan. It has to be heard, but hearing is not enough because we are hearing and our hearing is selective. Our hearing is defective because there is no mood of submission or humility to understand this knowledge. But even if we have heard, the important thing after that is supathan. Not just read, go back and reread. Read with full attention. Supathan is translated as properly chanting. One has to pay attention. This is not formality. We discuss something, I should go back and again contemplate on that. Tat Shrunvan Supathan Vicharan. Vicharan, again meditating on that. Paro Bhaktya Vimuchyan Naraha. The translation is Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless Purana. It is most dear to the Vaishnavas because it describes the pure and supreme knowledge of the Paramahamsas. This Bhagavatam reveals the means for becoming free from all material work, together with the process of transcendental knowledge, renunciation and devotion. Anyone who seriously tries to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, the word serious is very important, who properly hears and chants it with devotion, becomes completely liberated. These are some of the important glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. Before I close for today's session and our time together, I wanted to I definitely wanted to touch upon this, which I don't have it in the slides, the verse which comes in the second canto, 8th chapter, 4th verse, which says, Shrunvataha Shraddhaya Nitya Grinatasta Cheshtitam Kalena Nati Dirghena Bhagavan Visate Hriti. Very, very important verse of how we should apply Bhagavatam in our life. Shrunvataha Shraddhaya Nityam Grinatascha Socheshtitam Kalena Nati Dirghena Bhagavan Visate Hridi. If you go back and look to this verse 2.8.4 and look at two words which Prabhupada has translated very, very differently to catch people like us who look for excuses, who hear to our mind which keeps giving us excuses how not to read or how not to become serious. Two words. First word is Nityam. And if you see the word to word meaning of that, Prabhupada says regularly and always. The word always is very important because regularly also it can mean that somebody can hear Bhagavatam once in a week. Regularly I am coming, Prabhu, for Bhagavatam class. Regularly and always. Right? It's called that's why there is it's very clear. It has to be done regularly and always. And then the second word that we have to pay attention in that verse is Swacheshtitam. Swacheshtitam, Prabhupada translates as seriously by one's own endeavor. One has to be serious and there should be endeavor. If there is no seriousness, if there is no endeavor, that's why one of the purports which I was sharing earlier where Prabhupada says 99.99% of the people in this world are not interested in going back home, back to Godhead. They're not interested. This is a fact. Even though we are also taking to this process of devotion, we lack that seriousness for various reasons. But if one is serious and making endeavor by one's own endeavor, Kalena Nati Dirghena Bhagavan Visate Hridi. Krishna immediately becomes manifest in our heart. These are some of the important points of this verse. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Hare Krishna. Hmm.
Hare Krishna. One question I had is, you mentioned that Bhagavatam and Gita are the two scriptures which we should pay most attention to. So I was wondering if you could clarify or explain how other texts like Chaitanya Charitamrita or Nectar of Devotion or other books kind of fit in to the study of Bhagavatam and Gita.
Yeah, it's a good question. Chaitanya Charitamrita is nothing but glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is actually filled with the verses of Bhagavatam, the chosen verses of Bhagavatam. If you want to appreciate Bhagavatam, you should read Chaitanya Charitamrita. So Prabhupada is saying that Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is enough. And that's why, probably he had implemented this, that Bhagavatam class in the morning and Bhagavad Gita class in the evening. Because, that is sufficient. Of course, when he's saying that these two books are enough, it is referring to all the books written by Prabhupada, because that all the books that Prabhupada has written takes the principles of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. There is nothing else that is there. But there is no other thing, there is no other need to go anywhere else. That's what it is mentioned. The only word was very striking for me, because Prabhupada himself is writing this in that verse, that how much of faith we should have in these books. We should have strong, often there is a desire to know something more than what Prabhupada has written. But the first question that one should ask, not that this is wrong, right, wrong paradigm, there is no solution, there is no right answer for that. But the question should be the stepping back and asking oneself, have I read, have I understood really Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam? How much of conviction I have on this? One is spoken by the Lord himself, the other one is all the glorification of the Lord. If that is revealed to me, I don't need anything. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself exemplifies this by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam every day from Gadadhar Pandit, just 2 episodes of Dhruva and Prahlad, repeatedly. Raghunath Das Goswami didn't even worship a deity. He was worshipping Srimad Bhagavatam as Krishna. Why? Why not something else? Those are things we need to ask ourselves. Was it Raghunath Das? Raghunath Bhatta. Sorry. It's Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. Any other question? Anybody has any question online?
Yeah, I have another question. I'm just curious, is there anything that's talked about in Gita which is not said in Bhagavatam, or something that is in Bhagavatam which is not said in Gita? Why is there anything that makes either of those books very unique?
Yeah. Prabhupada says Bhagavad Gita is like the ABC. It's like school studies. So it's a synopsis of the conclusions of Vedic literatures, because it's a short dialogue. But if you want to elaborate that, it's a graduate studies Bhagavatam. It's an elaboration of all those principles. They don't contradict each other. But one is a summary and the other one is an expansion of it. You want to relish it more leisurely, and you really want to absorb, like this is filled with rasas, mellows. That's what Sukadeva Goswami says, Rasamalayam. What is that? Third verse, 1.1.3. First word. Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam sukamukhadamrita drava samyutam pivata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavuka. This is Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literatures, and filled with rasas. It's just because I don't know how to relish them or how to taste it, doesn't mean that this statement is false. There is that mood of, there is a eagerness, there is a submission, there is a humility, and all these things when we add, because Prabhupada mentions that in 1.1.2 purport also, if a person is humble, that Shushrusho Shraddha Dhanasya, that Shushrusho, in that Prabhupada says, if a person is humble, in that mood of humility when he approaches Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is revealed as it was revealed to Brahma in the case of his creation. The Lord revealed this knowledge, creative energy. Similarly, it will be revealed to us. But I need to have that faith. And maybe I just got a little diverted, but the point is, Bhagavad Gita is just a summary study, and Bhagavatam is an expansion of that. It's the ABC, and this is the graduate study. That's what Prabhupada puts it. Unless you have the ABC, you can't form sentence and words. So you need to know Bhagavad Gita well, and then you can appreciate Bhagavatam like anything. Please develop a taste and liking for Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is just amazing. It's a wonderful book. Actually, our rarest of rare, probably our greatest fortune is that Prabhupada has translated it in English and has left it for us to relish this. And the more we read, the more it's just amazing actually. Okay, if no other question, we will see further how there are, the next verse is going to be Atma Ramascha Munayo, the beautiful verse which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave 61 explanations. We have to do that, we have to see. But these are all wonderful things of Bhagavatam, filled with this, bedecked with jewels and very precious stones, which we need to just be careful, observant, and pay attention and see this. Then we can appreciate Bhagavatam like anything. I'll stop.